but hey, we've got this. So,
Yay!
it is showing live on mine. Does it show live for you?
Yeah, I see the little live.
Yay! Okay, we're in there. Well, guys, we have been talking about the attached book review series. This is probably backwards. My apologies. But instead of just more tips from the book, I wanted to bring on someone amazing to talk about the real world of attachment theory. So, introducing the lovely Aditi, who is an astrologer and engineer. Tell us about yourself, love.
Yeah, I am an astrologer. I'm a software engineer. I am a mom. I'm a wife. I am, living life as someone, healing from my own attachment wounds, attachment journey. And I've been really enjoying all of the knowledge that you've been sharing, Sammy. So I'm excited to, share some of my experience and ask you some questions too, because you're very well versed on these topics.
I nerd out on this stuff. So that was very nice to say I'm well versed. It's just like one of those things I'm like, ooh, I love it. I'm going to read those studies at 2 a.m. where other people want to sleep. I'm like, ooh, I want to know. But there's a lot of value in it. So totally understand. So when you took the attachment quiz, did you do one of the online ones or like the long form from the book?
I did the Psychology Today,
Oh,
and
perfect.
I think there was a second one. I'm forgetting the name of it was like Personal Development School. I'm looking at it now. So I did both of those, and it was really interesting. I found that while I was taking the quiz, I was like, kind of like there were two parts of me taking the quiz. Part of me was like, actually just genuinely like looking through my life. And then another part of me was like, well, I wonder what the outcome will be. Like, I wonder if I'm doing well as in my attachment.
Yes. I
Yeah.
think that is really hard. Once we know a little bit about it, we sort of know where those answers might lead. So it's harder to get a really genuine result the more we know, the harder it is to get the genuine result, I feel like. But I definitely think there are a lot of quizzes out there now. When I first heard about attachment theory, it was a couple years ago. A marriage counselor that I was meeting with told me, like, you need to look into this. And I'm like, okay. And I was scouring the internet, and there was like very little out there for real. Like, very, very little. There was a couple of books. This book was already out, but I did not read it yet for whatever reason. I don't know. But the internet did not have anything, and there were not 500 quizzes to choose from. So this time when I looked, I was like, I don't want to send her like screenshots from the book. That would take her an hour to do it from the book version because it's on paper. So I was like looking online, and I love the Psychology Today one you did. I thought that one was a little better at disguising like what the answer might lead you to. I thought that was a really good one. So I'm glad you did that one. So did both of your quizzes give you the same result?
Well, not quite. And I actually really appreciated the Psychology Today one because it was a little more nuanced in its response. And maybe that's partially because it was, like you said, a little more, like I couldn't tell from the questions, like, oh, am I going to have anxious or avoidant attachment based on this question?
Right.
Um, but what I liked about it is that it kind of reflected what aspects in relationship I have secure attachment around, and then where I have challenges. So I got a lot of like dismissive avoidant and fearful avoidant. And then in the personal development school, I also got fearful avoidant, but it was just like exclusively fearful avoidant. And I was like, I think I've been on a journey with attachment, and like similar to you, Sammy. When I was in therapy, I don't know, like maybe 10 years ago, a therapist was like, learn about attachment theory; it'll help you. And at that time, I was like very anxiously attached. So I think I've. It's interesting because
You hit the spectrum for real.
I'm like avoidant. But I have really stabilized a lot of things. So I kind of like appreciated Psychology Today for giving me a little bit of positive feedback, being like, okay, like I've made some strides. Yeah.
That's so interesting to me that we will kind of fluctuate. And it says like they can be changed. So that's always hopeful too. But I too was on completely different areas. Like I've been very secure I've been very anxious and I've also been very avoidant. So it is kind of funny how that works. And I have been saying this whole time, I'm like, I can't wait till it gets into it in the book to say, is it relationship dependent? Because I've always felt like
Mm.
I become so different in different relationships. And it did delve into that a little bit, like towards the very end of the book. It said, like, hey, if you are this, this is who you need to pair with. So I don't think it disagrees with that, but I still haven't gotten that solid research yet, but I might need your engineer brain to help me. That might be our research project. That might be our 2025, decoding all of that. So, besides the quizzes, I definitely agree with all your sentiments there. Um, was that the result that you were expecting based on past quizzes or not?
No, I was totally expecting anxious.
Really?
Yeah, so I was kind of, yeah, I thought it was really interesting to see avoidant. And it kind of, it reminded me of more of my dad rather than my mom, who in my childhood growing up, like it was definitely more anxious coming from my mom, avoidant coming from my dad. And it really helped me reflect on how, yeah, as I mature and time goes by in my relationship, like I'm not just me, I'm not just one parent, I'm this like amalgamation of both of my caregivers from childhood. It's like, and it probably extends beyond just my parents, right? Because there were other caregivers there who had their own attachment styles. So it's interesting to reflect on how, yeah, different people have influenced me throughout my life. And yeah.
I had some of those same thoughts too, especially about caregivers. My dad passed away about, well, a little over a year and a half ago, so I can't make him take it. But a lot of the avoidant and secure traits, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see that. I remember my parents would argue about him giving generic, this is where I'm going. This is back in the day before cell phones when you can know where people are going, but he'd be like, oh, going out fishing. And she'd be like, can I get a little more information? Like, what lake? Are you going on a boat? Are you going on land? What are you doing? And he would just look at her with this look like, who cares? Like, why does it matter? And now I can recognize that as like, oh, she was wanting more information. And he was just kind of like, I mean, I'm going fishing. Why does it matter? So I think we will probably see those in our own stuff too. But from childhood, I totally agree that I can see a few different things that kind of came to me as I matured too. So I love that we both had that same revelation there. How do you think that you will be able to, or do you think you will be able to apply this new knowledge or new test result to the relationship that you're in right now or relationships?
Yeah, I think the piece around like avoiding vulnerability is definitely something I've been noticing just, in different teachings that I've been absorbing. And so hearing that reflected to me in these test results shows me that there's more there. Like I can soften even more and I can be a little more I can like create more safety in my relationship with my husband and make it safe for me to be more vulnerable.
I love that. I think that's great. And now that we know what a big role caregivers do play, I think that that can help us be better moms too.
Oh,
Just not steering, one direction or the other. But I will say that honestly, any of the whether avoidant or anxious, any of the attachment issues, I don't feel like those show up with my kids the same way as they do with the guy. Like it's natural to be, nurturing and caring and super accepting, like no matter what it is. I feel like I can be just super accepting of it with the kids because I made them. They're beautiful creatures. But then with the guy, it's like, bro, like get yourself together. So I don't know. But I think overall attachment theory can definitely be, helpful for parenting too. I did see whenever I was searching up those quizzes, I saw that there are a few attachment theory books on parenting. So that might be next up on my list just to see, what research is out there and what information is out there.
yeah. Yeah, I'm so curious to hear about your experiences as a mom because I have a 1-year-old, right? And so it's really different caring for a 1-year-old versus like being with your kids who are like I think
Big.
For, like, teenagers, right?
Essentially grown, yeah. No, they're all ages. That 1-year-old stage is beautiful. Enjoy every little bit. All the snuggles, all her pictures are so cute. I'm like, I want to borrow her. I will give her back at bedtime, but I want to borrow her and snuggle her and all of that. Especially her little lashes and stuff. She just looks like a little baby doll. I'm like, oh my goodness, she's so cute. But I do think like the stages are interesting, and everyone always says like when they hit their teenage years, they'll really start to show their personality. I'm like, that is a lie from God because by the time they hit like one and they can really verbalize things, like that personality is out. And I swear, all my kids, like at that 1.5 age, really like 1.5, I feel like that like 18-month mark is the point. It's like, and this is their personality. And even now, like my oldest is 17, even now, like a lot of those same tendencies and traits and things are still right there that showed up at that early age. So I do think whatever you're seeing now and in the very near future, you're going to be seeing a lot of. So hopefully it's all adorable and cute behavior because it's probably going to stick, a lot of it at least. So
Yeah, I'm very curious to see and to report and to exchange notes.
oh yes, it's one of those fun journeys, but the backwards is fun, the forwards is fun, like it's all fun. So that's a good thing. Any questions or things that you thought of that you just wanted to know, either opinions on, thoughts on, or book info on, anything that jumped out at you?
Yeah, well, I definitely wanted to know what the book has to say about the evolution of attachment in one relationship, and like what does the research say about um like if you start a relationship attached in a certain way and it maybe is not ideal for both partners, like is it how possible is it to actually become securely attached eventually?
It does say that it is highly possible. It's not always what they see, but it's highly possible. And it depends on the partner's willingness to change, evolve, learn, of course, but it also depends on the initial scores. So if one partner is secure, does not matter which one, if one partner is secure, then the likelihood is that that will essentially rub off on the other person
Mm,
with no effort. So if you're with someone secure, you are automatically going to become more secure, whether you're avoidant or anxious, which I thought was really cool.
that is
But if the partners are on opposite ends, it says, hey, there are going to be conflicts that cannot be resolved. So you're going to have to understand and accept that certain areas are going to cause friction. They say that it can still work out if there's an anxious and avoidant, if either one, they do the work to try to become more secure, or two, the anxious statistically tends to be the one who is caving on all of the things. So they are making a conscious choice almost that, hey, I'm probably not going to get the closeness I want in the bedroom. I'm probably not going to get the closeness I want with conversations, things like that. And they said that normally it is the anxiously attached person making all the concessions. And if they do go with their instinct and address the problem and say, hey, this is really a problem for me, even if they communicate it well, if they say, hey, this is a problem for me, that they probably are not going to get much change from the avoidant. And a lot of times, whatever the problem is, they get worse than what they had before. Not normally like a step forward, like, hey, I've communicated well, I get a step forward, we're going to get closer. It's usually not a step forward, but either a step back or in the same spot. And they say that over time, that tends to lead to either the exhaustion or the breakdown of the relationship because the anxious person is like, hey, I've been conceding here for a year, for 5 years, for 10 years. I'm still not getting my needs met. I've made these needs clear. I've tried to work toward them. They're still not getting met. So a lot of times they are the ones who tap out on the relationship. If it's a well bonded relationship. If it's not, if it's like a new relationship, usually if an anxious person is asking for things, the avoidant is already like, nah, like I am gonna go ahead and roll out because they don't tend to attach very deeply. They would love to have the more promiscuous, but just the more surface level connections. They're like, ooh, a new relationship. This is fun. Ooh, I'm starting to fall in love and get really connected. Let me pull back. So they pull
Mhm.
back before it gets there. But in the relationships where they are connected or where there's a marriage or a deep bond, it says like hey, it'd be easier for you to start over with someone secure, but if you are committed to staying in this, then you can do the work, or you can just accept that there are certain facts that you may not make a lot of progress on. So it wasn't completely disheartening. I will say the internet is way more disheartening than the book because I have watched a lot of like podcasts and different things made by specifically avoidant coaches. And they will just kind of beat you down about it and almost make it seem like there's no hope. And I don't feel like that's true. Like, I feel like you're a really good example of that. Like, hey, I'm seeing changes, but
Mm.
also, even with an avoidant attachment style, everyone still has the innate need. And that's one thing the book talked about that I loved. Whether you naturally reach for closeness like an anxious or push away closeness, you still have the innate need. So it's not really about the need being different, it's just about the way that you are fulfilling the need. So I think having that understanding is 1,000% effective for avoidance just because most are like, oh, you want me to read something? No. Oh, you want me to watch something with you? Oh, you want me to go to counseling? No. But people who are enlightened and are working on themselves do not have that same attitude. So I feel like an avoidant who is working on themselves and willing to look at the research and willing to look at, the statistics and say, hey, is this me? Yes or no? Hey, do I do this? Yes or no? That person obviously has a chance to be secure because they're aware that they're insecure. Most avoidants statistically have no idea. They don't do research. They're just like, ugh, everyone around me is insecure and they're clingy and they bother me. So, any avoidant who does not have that attitude of everyone else is clingy obviously has, a good chance. So, I feel like for you personally, I don't know, have you done any research or asked your partner about what style they are in?
We did some attachment stuff in couples therapy a few years ago, and he was definitely more on the avoidance side at that point. And right now, I feel like maybe he's more on the anxious side, and I wonder if like we kind of just like switched.
You might have.
Yeah.
And that could definitely make sense because it does say that the statistics, it was actually talking about like the dating pool for people who were getting back into it, that you're most likely to meet an avoidant because the secure and anxious tend to stay in relationships longer, but that avoidance will not be with other avoidants. Like the statistics are like zero, or if they are, it's very short term, usually like a sexual nature relationship, like a hookup thing, and then they're out. But they won't stay with other avoidants because there tends to not be enough relationship glue to really hold them together.
Mm,
So avoidant does not really happen, but switches happen all the time. So
interesting.
I actually asked my counselor about this on a call I had on Tuesday, and I was like, so if people switch, I think it's interesting that you can go from one extreme to the other, kind of like I did, kind of like you have. I'm like, how does that make sense? He's like, well, it makes perfect sense to me. I'm like, okay, explain. And he's like, because on your way from anxious to avoidant, or on your way from avoidant to anxious, you pass through the middle ground of secure. And I'm like,
Mm.
okay. He's like, so if an anxious is healing, they're going to be getting more secure. And then potentially some of those things that were anxious or incessant behaviors like the calling back to back or just really preoccupation, they
Yeah.
heal preoccupation. And then they go the avoidant route, like, I'm not preoccupied. I don't care where you are or what you're doing or what is happening. And
Yeah.
same on the avoidance side. If they were just not so interested in connection and then they start healing that, they get to secure, then all of a sudden they want even more closeness and more connection. So a flip flop could definitely be the case. How long have you guys been together?
We've been together since 2014, so 11 years. Yeah,
That's definitely time to make a ton of changes and growth and things that yeah. You should have him retake it too, just out of curiosity, be like, "Where are you at, sir?"
Yeah, I think he would be open to it. We've had different explorations of couples therapy, and I feel like we are more stable and secure in many ways. And then also, like, change happens, stress happens, like life is just so wild sometimes, and I feel like that kind of shows me where we still have work to do. So
Yeah, it's a big eye opener too, though. And I think a lot of times guys, especially, can settle and ground themselves. Like when they see a beautiful baby looking up at them, they may not have like the heart pangs like we do, but they're like, oh, this is serious. Like I am now a provider. I am now like, I'm dad. So a lot of times avoidant men tend to soften up a little bit whenever they have a baby. So that could be a factor too. Those lashes got to him too. That's what it was. Now he has all the feels, so blame your daughter in a good way for that one, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, hey, Christy and Natasha. Hello. How
Oh, hi guys. I didn't even see the comments under there. The screen looks different, and I got a new phone finally. Last night, my iPhone 16 came in, and I didn't know that it had different buttons like all around it. Excuse me. So I'm like, I don't know how to turn off my notifications. I don't know how to do any of this stuff, but we are going on, so it'll go on. Oh,
yeah.
hi, Coach Beef. Hi, guys.
Yay. Aw. Yeah, and well, I'm curious if people have questions about attachment in the comments, if anyone's kind of thinking through attachment stuff on their end or what's coming up. If anyone's reading the book Attached as well.
Yes, is anybody reading? Do you have good info or questions? Have you taken the test? Are you surprised by anything? We would love to hear from you guys as well, for sure.
And I'm definitely curious too about the actual test from the book. You said it was like super deep.
It
So
was long. I liked the Psychology Today one better because, like we said, like you could not tell from the question or answer which way it was going to spin you. This one, let me pull it up. I think it was chapter 3. And I can send you pictures of it too,
I
so you can do it if you want.
yeah,
But it breaks it down a little differently than I've ever seen it. So it'll have several pages where it goes through questions and it'll ask you to score the items as a 1, 2, or 3. So one would be oh, sorry, that's for the partner. Untrue of them, moderately true of them, or very true of them. So that's if you have a partner who does not want to take the test, that you can kind of assess their normal behavior. If that's true of them, something you're seeing, moderately true of them, or something you don't see of them. So I did think that was interesting too.
yeah.
And that was like 4, maybe 5 pages of those questions. And my husband was like in one category on every single one. And so I thought that was funny. I was like, well, I guess you don't need to take it because we have the results right here. Tasha asks us, how do you know if you have attachment issues with men? They will show up. We do not have a choice if we are attached or not, but we do have some choices in how we present that. So they don't consider attachment issues if it's a one time or one off. So if there's a normal behavior, like say your husband goes and plays basketball every Saturday at 5, he has a game, he's home by 7. And one night, out of the blue, he is not home and it's 11 o'clock at night and you're calling him. You've called him again, like, hey, where are you? You okay? If it's an out of the blue situation and you have a nervous system reaction, you're freaking out, you may be calling incessantly, or you may be calling the local hospitals, the police department, like, okay, what is wrong? You're freaking out. That would be an example of anxiously attached with men, which is the most common for women to be anxiously attached. Now, if it were he went to the grocery store and he should be gone for an hour and he's gone for 2 hours and you're having that same crazy nervous system response, you're sweating, your heart is beating fast, you're sure he's dead. That is not a normal response. Even then, if it's a one timer, it's not really necessarily an attachment issue. You might be tired, you might just be off that day. But if it's happening regularly and you're regularly responding in insecure ways or terrified ways, that would be how you would recognize having an anxious attachment style as a woman to a man. Now, if you are avoidant, you would notice it with the push away behaviors. So he's trying to cuddle with you on the couch and you're like, no, like let me back away. Again, if you're in a bad mood or lady time, whatever, and it's a one time like boy scoot back, not a big deal. But if every time he comes in to cuddle with you, you are pushing him away, that might be a thing. Generic responses is another of the big ones that gets talked about and dived really deep into, which I think is funny. Like, just in our technology world, like, we have phones, we have all the things, so we essentially know where people are. Like, even within my house, there's some cameras, so I know, like, if he's in the garage working, whatever. But an avoidant is not going to say, like, hey, babe, I'm going to the grocery store to grab a few things. I'll be back in half an hour. They're probably going to be like, bye, and walk out the door. So having a natural inclination to not give detail to a partner is a way that you may have an attachment issue show up if you are avoidant toward a man. Now, if you are just naturally, short of speech, probably not a big deal. If you would say that to your kid too, like, bye, see you later, probably not a thing. But if you would tell your mom and your daughter that, like, I'm going to the gym, I'll be back in half an hour, like, Pilates class, see you. But with the guy, you're like, bye. And you don't give the detail that you would give someone else, that's one of those good key indicators, too.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's really interesting that you mentioned that there's like it's the relationship with your spouse or with your partner that's where it really shows because yeah, I feel like with some of those questions I was like, "Oh, I'm like I'm totally the secure version of this in 99% of my relationships," but it's like that's not what we're talking about here.
Yes. I actually ran into that after I had been to a little bit of counseling on it, and then I had just kind of completely detached, like 100% detached, did not worry the same, any of that. And I was like, all of a sudden, I'm getting completely secure scores. And I'm like, oh, well, because I'm not interacting with that person to have any of those behaviors. I'm 99% just, working or dealing with kids and things like that versus in the relationship. So that is a super valid point that even if we are very secure in friendships and we don't push away the friends, the family, we still might be really quick to push away or super pull in a partner. Like, that was an example at one point when I was anxious that my husband gave me. And I was like, that was actually really smart. Okay. Because my sister, I don't remember what it was. We were supposed to meet up for something. And I called her and she didn't answer. And I just was like, okay, went on with my day. I think I was doing homework actually at the time, whatever it was. I just went on with my day, completely peaceful and fine. He's like, I noticed that you didn't call her back. I'm like, well,
Oh.
no, I mean, she'll call me like when she's not busy. She's probably busy. He's like, so why does she get that? And I don't. I'm like,
Oh wow.
what do you mean? He's like, if I did not answer my phone, you would have called me back. You would have texted me. You would have sat there probably staring a hole in your phone until I answered. I'm like, no. He's like,
Called out.
seriously, let's be honest here. And I'm like, huh, well, maybe. I mean, maybe. So with, friends, family, even the kids, like, I am chill as a cucumber. I do not stress or worry. But at that point in our relationship, I definitely was very anxious. I definitely was like on him like white on rice about especially about times. And I do think by saying like I don't really care like what grocery store you're at or what it is you're doing, but when you don't tell me, my mind spirals into something terrible. Like it must be something bad or he would have told me. If it's something good, why is he hiding it? And the more we discuss that, I do think that's something, especially for avoidance, that's an easy fix. If
Mm.
you understand like, oh, this is actually like hurting their feelings or bothering them, that I'm not giving information that I would give mom or I would give my sister. So I do think that was one of the things that I've seen play out in real life that was very helpful. Now it's not so much an issue. That's not really something that we run into because now I will point it out like, oh, okay. So we're giving generic vagues like, all right, he gets a little anxious even though he's extremely avoidant. He gets a little anxious if I'm going to the gym and places like that, or even in certain outfits. Like, he'll be like, wait, where are you going? Who's gonna be there? That kind of thing. So I do think just being conscious, whether anxious or avoidant, about whatever level of details we would give our best friend, we can offer to our partner as well
Yeah.
without a hesitation, without a fear or worry that it's giving too much or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. Yeah. My baby is here. She's making an appearance. Hi. Sorry, I got distracted.
You can show her if she can be seen. I don't know. I don't know if she needs to be seen to the whole internet.
Oh,
But
yeah.
later, when
Yeah.
she's ready.
One day when she can formally consent, I'm gonna put her on the internet. But right,
Yes.
yeah.
There we go. Well, I quit flipping for a second there. Let me go back to that chapter 3 area where it goes through the attachment styles. So in this one, the format is that it's true. It'll have a different sample and it'll say, is this true for you? And then it has 3 categories. And the categories, it does not tell you what they are, but the categories will be, is it true for an anxious? Is it true for a secure? Or is it true for an avoidant? And then after a few pages of these questions, it has you add up all your column A, all your column B, all your column C.
Yeah.
So the questions on that is more of the generic, not so much generic, but more of the obvious. Like the first question is, I often worry that my partner will stop loving me. We know that's going to go in the anxious category. Like you can look at the question and know if I mark this, it's going to say I'm anxious. I find it easy to be affectionate with my partner. That one I feel like is pretty obvious too, that we know that's secure. Like we know it's easy, it's not too much, it's not pull back, it's just the normal easy, like I don't even think about being affectionate, that's the normal. So I feel like these questions are a little more straightforward but also easier to manipulate than the Psychology Today quiz was. They did have, after the quiz though, a section I really liked. It said, what if I'm still not sure? When people hear about attachment styles, they often have difficulty recognizing their own style. Some people tell us right away, I'm anxious, I'm avoidant, or I think I'm secure, but others have a harder time figuring it out. If you scored high on more than one attachment style, you might find it helpful to learn that 2 dimensions essentially determine attachment styles. And then it had a little axis here that, I don't know, a good way to show this. But essentially it shows 2 dimensions where if you are low anxiety, you'll know, are you low anxiety or are you high anxiety? Secure would be in the middle.
Yeah.
And then it also has low avoidance and high avoidance. I don't know if this is viewable.
No, that's
So by using that, I do feel like it makes it pretty clear. Like if you know your high avoidance, you're trying to push away, but you know that you are low anxiety, you're not worried about where they are, you're not worried about them leaving, you're not worried at all really about the relationship, you're not preoccupied, it's going to tell you, hey, you are avoidant. Or if you are the high avoidance but you're high anxiety, you are worried a lot about it, you are still preoccupied, that's going to be the anxious avoidant mix, that little 5% of the population that's not one or the other, and they're picking up pieces of both. So
Yeah.
I thought that was really good, just because even this last time I took it, my scores were very, very, I think it was only 3 points apart on 2 different ones. So I was like, okay, well, and I don't know. I feel like a lot of people probably teeter over time like we did, but even throughout a quiz, you might not be very firmly planted in one space. So I thought that axis was a really good diagram to just kind of see that. There was something else that I thought would be interesting just on the parenting perspective. In
Yeah.
that same chapter, it said, where do these classifications come from? Interestingly enough, they come from watching babies' behaviors. Attachment styles were first defined by researchers observing the way babies, which were 9 to 18 months old, behaved during the strange situation test. So this is one of the studies that they talk about a ton in all attachment theory. This is like the big study that they talk about. But this book did have like 20 some other studies, which I liked because the rest kind of cut it off at this one. But the secure study was just putting a baby in a strange environment. A secure baby is going to look around and it's like, ooh, toys, books, cool. Mommy's right here. I'm going to touch all of it. I'm going to play with all of it. They're living their best life. But then when mom walks out of the room, you see where it really goes. Most babies are going to act out. They're going to cry, which is normal. They're going to cry until mom is back. And that is the example they gave for anxious. Like, hey, we are only crying because mommy is gone. Like, we like the toys, we like the room, but we don't feel that attachment to mom. So we're going to cry until we do. And
Right.
then the avoidant just acts like they didn't notice. They see mom walk out of the room and they're like, hmm, they're not playing and engaging the way they were, but they're not reacting either. They're generally not crying, not searching for mom. Where the anxious, like I've watched a couple of videos that actually in a psychology class, and they did one, it looked like kind of like a daycare setting. And there were some kids that were, I mean, they were freaking out, like knocking stuff over, running for the door, pulling the door as hard as they could. And even my own daughter, one of my daughters, who she is now 13, but whenever she had to go to daycare, every morning was the we're pulling on the leg, we're screaming, we're crying, we're sitting by the screen door until you come back, which was often a very long time. She would not eat her food. Like
Mhm.
every protest behavior a baby can have, because she couldn't really verbalize it. She was like
Yeah.
1.5. She couldn't say, like, I'm doing this till mom gets back. But she found ways to non-verbally show, like, I'm not eating till she's here, not playing, not smiling, not anything. So it was really rough. But I got very lucky that the person watching her, she had a daughter the same age, and then she had a son the same age as my son. So it was just 4 kids there. So after like a month and a half, she finally was like, okay, this is really exhausting. I
Mhm.
guess I'll play. I guess I'll paint. I guess I'll. And then it was fine from there. But the test definitely I thought was good, that it showed where this origin was, that the secure person test was where they really started unfolding all of the interesting research from. So that's
Yeah.
a good one. I don't know if there's a good way to link stuff really on YouTube, but I might have to work on that so that people can see the different tests and studies that support it, because they were worldwide too. It wasn't just a small part of the population they tried, especially the children's test on. It was everywhere. Different countries, different researchers, and they all got the same conclusion. So
Yeah.
really when the science is all there, you know it. You can't really deny that when different languages and things like that are all coming up with the same thing.
Yeah, super universal.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there like a description box you can drop the link in after the live is over?
That's what I'm wondering. It's just it has a character limit. So I'm wondering if there's a good way to link it. Cause like the attachment test that I sent you, crazy long link, like
Yeah,
1,000 characters. So I'm gonna try to link some of this, but I don't know. I don't know how much we'll get there.
I can send you a link to like a URL shortener website.
Ooh, that's a good idea. Because a lot of these, to get to the actual item that you want to get to, that would be super helpful, because some of these are crazy long. See, this is why you're friends with engineers, guys, because they know all the things. Ooh, while we are on your specialty areas, with your astrology stuff, do you see anything that we can pick up from that, from those tendencies, the star signs, all of that stuff? That is something I know about this much about, but I feel like you know all the things. So give me the tea here. Give me the tea.
Well, I think that it's different for your chart. So I will say there's no like it's not like all Sagittariuses are anxiously attached or something, or like all Cancers are securely attached. It's not like that. But your moon sign and what your moon is up to in your chart can say a lot about how you attach and what you need to feel safe, and the different aspects that your moon is going through can say a lot about what's hard for you, what's easy for you, what you like in relationship, as well as Venus. But it's so unique to the chart, and that there's nuance to it. Like I would never say, all Scorpios are evil. I would never say that. But
No generalizations, but
yeah, I think that the astrology of compatibility is super interesting, and I love the idea of the astrology of attachment. Though I definitely think there's like a polarity, there's a spectrum, just like in the beautiful chart that you showed of the different quadrants of attachment. Like I think you can play with astrology in the same way, and it can show you like, if the moon is with Saturn or with Mars, it's like, oh yeah, maybe there was some stuff that happened with your mom that was like not so fun. It was not great. or if the moon is in a sign that's ruled by Mars or Saturn, it's possible, you have challenges caring for yourself or nurturing yourself in a certain way. But yeah, I would really look to your moon sign to tell you the story of your attachment.
So how do they quantify all of that? Like, I feel like there is accuracy to it because I mean, there's receipts. Like, you can look back and be like, oh, okay, this is what it said and this is what it was. There's receipts available. But in real time, how does that, how can you quantify that in simple language to show the validity in like a way, like, tell me for my 2-year-old version. Give me the baby version.
Well, what's your moon sign? Do you know your moon sign?
I've looked it up before, I cannot remember. My birthday is only a few days different from yours, and I've searched it wasn't too long ago, actually, I wrote it down somewhere, but I
Yeah.
have a stack of notebooks for different topics, so that would be like a 3-day live. I'd show back up like Sunday, be like, "Hey, found it."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that astrology can show you a map of your attachment, basically. But it's not set in stone. It's like I really believe that your destiny is what you make it. Like free will exists. So I would never say that you have all these challenges to attachment and it's always going to be like that in your whole life. So I'm always cautious when people are like, tell me the story of my life. I'm like, no, let's have a conversation. you know
Yeah. I
yeah.
agree with that, and there is so much flexibility, like, that's kind of the baseline, but we still have a part in creating things, and even with attachment too, I think it's good to know the baseline, like, the more we know, the better we can approach things, so it's a great advantage to us the more that we know, but I think it may be seems to be the same in that too. It's good information to have, and it may kinda like this, give you those aha moments with the backtracking, like, "Oh, well, that makes sense," after the fact. So,
Yeah.
I loved if you guys have not watched it, go on her channel and watch all the information about the Drake beef, like, some of that, I didn't even make it to the I was like, "Whoa," like, I'm just eyes wide, like, one of the days I was in the bathtub and I almost dropped my phone because 'cause I'm like, "What? Whoa," like, I guess I could have gotten my new phone earlier if I would have just went ahead and dropped it that day. But I do think it's super interesting. And there's just so much beyond what we know. Like our programming is so limited and there's so much information out there that I feel like there's access to now.
Yeah, I feel like with astrology, what helps me most is getting a sense of what I'm taking for granted in my life and what tools are going to resonate with me to make positive changes in my life. So it's like, yeah, with some of the stuff that was happening for Drake and Kendrick, it's like, no, there's a lot that's influencing them and a lot that's creating this unique kind of conflict for them that is kind of in a way destined, but then of course they're using their free will to make it their own and make it entertaining for us, frankly.
Yeah. Oh, definitely entertaining. And the kind of bigger forces at will is always super interesting to me. Like, I feel like that could have been a really awesome movie to watch. Like, hey, like we're watching the beef in real time, and then you're like above there saying, like, and this, and this,
Yeah.
and this.
But I will say, like, Cancer, the sign Cancer is really interested in the family and really interested in like the home dynamic. And our sons are both in Cancer, and right now there's going to be a full moon in Cancer on the 13th, and it's the 10th today, right? So yeah, in 3 days. So it's a really good time to meditate on like what's happening in my home, like why is my home life the way it is, like how can I bring more balance there, because full moons kind of make things, they shine a light on things, they shine a spotlight on things. So I feel like attachment starts at home. um
Definitely.
yeah.
That's interesting too. And I have definitely, there's a few people in my very corporate straight laced job who will constantly send me like moon updates, like, ooh, be careful. Like, we have a meeting on this day and it's a full moon on this day. Like, everybody be quiet. And at first I was like, that is a very different thing to hear in this type of environment.
Yeah.
And then there were so many times after he's like, see, I told you guys this, and this happened. I'm like, I cannot argue with some of those things. You just can't argue with it. And I'm like, I have the email, like it's in writing with the timestamp. Like you can't make some of it up. So
It's yeah, I've heard people say that, like, I know someone who used to work as a guard at, or like a security guard at, like a mental asylum, and they said that full moons were really intense times. And I've heard that
yes.
people who worked in like jails and things like that. So I don't know.
I have too. I have a friend who's a guard at a high security prison, and she schedules herself very carefully because she's like, those are the nights you get beat up and the craziness happens. I also have a friend who works in like the psych division area of a hospital here, and she's like, man, she's like, I wish. She's been a nurse for like 20 some years. She's like, I wish I would have kept a record because you cannot deny how closely it does align with full moons. Like there's a guarantee we're going to have 2 or 3 events during a certain lunar cycle. And I'm like, what? Like that's fascinating and crazy to me. But again, like there's receipts because those things do not change. They're static. Like once it's happened, it's happened. And so the things that come along with it are very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would love to see like a detailed analysis of it all.
Oh yes, maybe someday. Maybe that will be available to us. That'll
Yeah.
be another thing I can nerd out on, like unapologetically. That now I know way more than I need to know about all of that. Well, thank you so much for being willing to share your results in real time and follow along through all of this craziness. Hopefully, we both gain some more stuff and have follow up and new revelations later. Anything else you want to end us with?
Um, what's next on the attached journey?
I
What?
do have tomorrow. Dr. B. Cooper is getting on talking about hers, and I'm curious to see where she falls. I have my own theories, but I'm curious to see where she falls. And
Yeah.
then I do have a couple other friends, one couple specifically, who are both very secure. And I absolutely cannot wait to hear from them because I've watched their dynamic differ from everyone else that I know. And so I am really curious to get their feedback. I still have some more chapters of book review to get through, but once I got to the test, I was like, I want to know more. I want to see where the people that I know fall and how that, shows up and affects them. So I don't know. We need someone to take all of our research notes, but we've got more to come. And definitely, if you talk to your spouse and get some more info, send it my way. Got my number, you've got my contact. So find me, tell me all the things. You can also send me pictures of the little one when she does the really funny things, because that's like my favorite. Puppies and babies, I will watch them all day long.
Oh
So
yeah.
got a heart for that. I'll take them all.
Yes. Yes. Totally. I will. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. This was really fun.
Yes. Well, hopefully we have more to come, but enjoy your semi kid free afternoon. And I'm sure we'll catch up soon.
Yeah. Have a great weekend, Sammy.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.